Thanks for watching the video, and thanks for sticking around to the hows and whys portion of the presentation. So the man asked the question, what makes this two-player version of Catan so different than the other two-player versions out there? Well, I have been online and searched out different two-player versions, even the one at the Catan website, and I found that they all have similar problems that come up. First of all, they don't have the same kind of gameplay feel as the 3 and 4 player game, and I think the biggest reason for that is the strategy. It doesn't become as important in the other two-player versions because there's a much higher ratio of resource hexes to players. So if we look at the regular game, there's 19 hexes that go on the gameplay board. 18 of those are resource producing. With 2 players, that's 9 hexes per player for resources, which is pretty high compared to the 3-player version, which has 6 resource hexes per player, and of course the 4-player version even less. So the bottom line, most of the 2-player versions I've seen are kind of slow and boring. And I wanted to get away from that. So let's solve the first issue, the territory issue. What I did is I simply removed one of each different type of resource tiles. I simply turned them upside down and called them water hexes. So now instead of having 18 resource producing tiles in the game, we have 13 resource producing tiles. So this is how we go ahead and set up the board.
You build the game board for the 2-player game by using the variable setup rules as outlined in the standard rules for standard Catan. With the 2-player version, I like to put the terrestrial tiles in one pile after I've shuffled them up, and then the 5 water hexes. I like to take a die, and simply if I roll a 1 or 2, I put in a water hex first. Anything else, I go ahead and put in a terrestrial hex. So start here. Another roll would be a 1, so the next one would be a water hex. Another roll, a 3 would be a land hex, and etc. And simply build the board from there.
We're ready to place the number tokens and the ports on the board properly.
Once you have your game board set up, then you have to put the number tokens on there. Here's the standard number tokens. In this game, as you see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 resources, a desert tile, and a lake tile, which we can talk about later. So we need 13 numbers. What we do is we take away 1, 4, 1, 3, an 11, and a 10. So these 4 tiles go out of the game for now, and what we're left over is with 14 tiles. So you take the 2 and the 12, and those go together on one tile. So again, I just flip these all over, randomly put them up there, and I use the variable method to set these up. So 3, 5, 5, 10, 12. So when the 2 comes up, that's where it goes. 11, 2, so it goes here. 9, 6, 6, 4, 8, 8, 6.
As in the regular game, you want to make sure that no red numbers are next to each other, so no 6s next to 8s. If that happens randomly, just move them around a bit until they're not touching each other. Now let's look where we're going to place our ports.
You take a look at your standard instructions here to get an idea of where the port placements go, or look at the information that I've provided with the Word document with the 2-player instructions, and put the port pieces following the standard outline to start. So just basically grab one randomly and start placing the ports. So the ports have been placed around the board as per the standard rules. Everybody on this side is good for port placement. We have 1, 2, 3 ports that are on water. So the rules is that only one port can go on a hex. So we have a situation here, we can put this port here. This port can go to this hex. Now it leaves us with an issue because this port cannot go in this hex because this one has a port. Can't go in this hex because this guy has a port. So what are we to do? Well, the only other option is to take it to a hex that does not have a port. You have to take a look at all the hexes that border the ocean. This inland hex, this inland water hex, is considered to be a lake hex, so it doesn't have oceanfront property. Lakefront property, we can talk about that later. So if we go around the board from the top, all the hexes that have water, that have ocean frontage, have ports. So the only hex that has ocean frontage that doesn't have a port is this one right here. So this number 4, so we can't place it here because that means that this hex would have 1 1/2, because each of these intersections counts as a half. So we have to go here and place it kind of in the bay, if that makes sense. There's more information on this in the detailed rules.
The game board is all set up and ready to go. Now, to play the game, there are a few modified rules that we need to live by. And if you don't, I think that guy's going to have something to say about it. We're going to talk about building bridges over water hexes. The robber has now become Robin Hood. Also, how many cards we can have in each hand, and some rules about trading. Bridge building. Because of the water hexes in the game, we had to find a way to be able to span those water hexes, so you can build bridges. You can build bridges over the flats of a water hex, just the same way you can build a road over the flat of a regular terrestrial hex. The difference here is that you can only go 2 spans over water maximum, and the building cost for a bridge is an ore and a wood resource card. So keep that in mind. You don't get any more tiles to build special bridges, so you have to decide how you're going to build bridges and how you're going to build roads. The Robin Hood Robber. In this game, the robber is Robin Hood. He does take from the rich and give to the poor. So, as in the regular game, when a 7 is rolled, all players with over a certain amount of cards have to lose half of them. In this game, the limit is increased from 7 to 9. And of course, when you divide by 2, you always round it down. Now, where the Robin Hood mode comes in is that the player with the least amount of victory points showing on the board controls the robber, i.e. they get to move it to whatever hex they want to, and they get to pick a card from their opponent. Now, the victory points are calculated by looking simply at what you can see. Any victory points hidden in cards that are turned over do not count, so it's only points on the board. Trading. Now, the first rule, there's no trading resources between players. There's only 2 players, so any trades that you'd make would only directly help your competitor anyway. You can still do bank trading. If you have 4 of one resource card, you can trade it in for any type of card on your turn. The one thing that will allow you to get more resource cards is increased access to ports. For instance, water hexes allow more ports to be away from the edges of the board. So if you're smart, you might build on one of the special 2-to-1 trading options if they're inland for sure. So we've gone ahead and covered some of the major rule changes. There's some minor rule changes. First off, the robber doesn't come into play until each player has 3 victory points. This will allow each player to get a chance to build up their board faster. Also, again, just to repeat, the cards in hand, you can now have 9 instead of 7, and you can have up to 9 cards without being affected by the robber. This gives you an opportunity to make up for the less resource tiles on the board. And when you start the game, you start with 4 resource cards instead of 2, thus getting yourself off to a quicker start. So now we're finally ready to play. Each player rolls 1 die. The highest score goes first. You build in the same order as in the regular game. Player A goes first, and then the last player, in this case player B, builds consecutively. Then the player A rounds out the building. The free building stage is still 2 roads and 2 settlements as before, each placed 1 at a time. And then we have the free resource cards of hexes that you are touching with your settlements. You can have up to 4 cards each, again allowing for the game to start quickly. That's it. I hope you enjoy this version, this 2-player version of the Settlers of Catan. Thanks so much, and keep your eyes open for a new video coming up on my YouTube channel that'll talk about some new gameplay features like lake trading when you have one of those single water hexes, also volcanic mountains, and even earthquakes. Enjoy, and best of luck in your quest to become the ruler of Catan.